Welcome to You Can't Say That in Court, a podcast by Rise Women's Legal Center. I'm Vicky Law.
And I'm Stephanie Melnick. We're your hosts in this conversation about survivors of violence navigating the BC family law system. We recognize that the system is colonial and it causes harm to families, which disproportionately affects Indigenous people.
By speaking more widely about these harms, we hope to raise awareness about the challenges survivors face as they navigate the colonial family law system. This podcast is our attempt to collectively identify the barriers and ask for positive changes to be made. Thank you for joining us. Our podcast series will discuss difficult topics such as gender-based violence and intimate partner violence, including physical, sexual, emotional, psychological, and financial abuse. Please be aware that this is a thread that is woven throughout all the episodes, and we hope that you will take care of yourselves however you need.
Hello, welcome to episode 17 of You Can't Say That in Court. This episode, Vicky and I are talking about finding a good fit with a family lawyer. And when I was planning, I was accidentally naming this episode How to Find a Family Lawyer. And so we're going to talk about that really briefly about how hard it is to actually find a lawyer. But we do want to focus mostly on what does a good fit with a lawyer mean? Why is that important? And get into kind of the benefits of finding someone that you kind of jive with a bit. Yeah. We always start a lot of our conversations with, if everyone just had a lawyer, then everyone would be better off, right, Vicky? We're like, everyone who wanted a lawyer had a lawyer. There'd be a lot of problems. This just instantly disappeared.
Yeah, I think the demand is definitely so much higher than what we can provide as the family law bar, but also because it's so expensive to privately hire a lawyer. It's outrageously expensive for a lot of folks. And especially when we talk about the cost of going to court and going to litigation, that all those expenses and cost and court filing fees just add up. So in addition to paying for and hiring the lawyer and paying their fees, there's also additional fees to consider that are mandated by the court process.
Right. Yeah, I know when our clients come to us for help, sometimes they maybe had looked into hiring a private lawyer. And if they were able to get, like a few $1,000s together for an initial retainer, then once they were quoted how much a trial would cost, if it was looking like it was going to trial, it was just totally cost prohibitive. So I think, yeah, that financial barrier is probably the biggest barrier. It makes it really hard to find a lawyer when you just can't afford one.
Yeah, especially for the clients that we work with in the survivors of violence. We've talked about like financial abuse in previous episodes. So knowing that there is this huge power imbalance, especially when it comes to financial resources, a lot of our clients and a lot of the survivors are trying to just make basic ends meet with like housing and food and providing
childcare
for
and stable
exactly.
employment. Yeah, all the like you say, like the survival kind of level stuff.
Yeah. And to add on lawyer fees, legal fees.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, and then without pulling in a totally different topic, the cost of housing always comes up as well.
Of
And
course.
that's normally a huge portion of where people's income goes. So saving for a lawyer is almost impossible. But in family matters, I have had the question before about lawyers working on contingency. And I just feel like that's not a thing where a lawyer would not take any payment up front and they would just take a percentage of any settlement that was made. That's not really a thing in family law, is it?
It's prohibited to do that for,
Well, that explains it.
I think, yes, for prohibited for parenting issues.
Right, when there are parenting issues, of course. If it's just property division, I know there have been a couple of people who've asked about, well, I know I'm going to get, half of the family home or something like that. But
Yeah. And I
yeah,
think we
it's
talked about
complicated.
interim distribution of
Right.
property before, where
Yeah.
like parties can people can go in and ask for the court to release some of the family assets so that the parties can hire a lawyer
A
using
lawyer.
that
Yeah.
those resources to hire a lawyer, and that's separate from contingency. But like, yeah,
Right.
there's a lot of ways to privately retain a lawyer if the family has the money to begin with.
Right.
And if a survivor has somewhat access to that,
Right.
then they that option is available. But as we know, a lot of people don't.
Yeah. And a lot of people go to legal aid first, which is where they absolutely should try and go. But they might not qualify because of the property threshold or the financial threshold. And yeah, we see this a lot of people falling into that big gap between making, and I'm using air quotes here, too much money to
Hmm.
qualify for legal aid, or they have too much property and they don't qualify for legal aid, but they absolutely don't have enough money to hire a private lawyer to fully represent them and do all the stuff that lawyers do. So yeah, it's really, really hard to meet that financial barrier. I'm glad we're talking about the financial barrier first. I feel like this is the biggest thing, and it's sometimes awkward to talk about.
Yeah, and I think, even with legal aid, folks who qualify for legal aid, there's limited.
Yeah.
Um, it's not forever, right? There's
No.
there's a
Yeah.
limited ability for legal aid to provide their support, and that's because there's so many people who need this form of help.
Right.
And so always trying to balance um, helping as many people as we can
Right.
to with the limited resources that Legal Aid BC has.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. There is a bit of an expansion with their new family law clinics, and so
Hmm.
hopefully that helps. But if someone doesn't qualify for legal aid, then we have talked a lot about kind of creative ways of maybe scraping together a bit of money for a private lawyer and what the strategies are to make that money last as long as possible. Like uh, we'll use a few kind of technical terms here, but like unbundled legal services where the lawyer's just
Hmm.
providing almost like an a la carte menu of specific things. And we talked about when we were discussing support workers, how support workers can help complement the legal work that the lawyer's doing so that that money that the lawyer is using can go a bit further if there are free services that can do some of the like paralegal or the preparatory work. And
Hmm.
then some lawyers will offer their services on a sliding scale as well. Yeah, which can be really helpful depending on what someone can pay at which point.
Yeah, and I think these are all great, like sliding scale, unbundled, or limited representation.
Hmm.
At some point, I think all these options still require the litigant, the survivor, to self-represent at some point through the
Right,
process. And
right.
so going back to your original point is, we wish everyone had a lawyer. Wouldn't it be
Yeah,
great if they all had a lawyer? Um, that's the idealistic point that we're coming from, saying like
right,
it would just be so beneficial if everyone just had access to a lawyer who could provide the full representation,
right,
because I've definitely, and Rise has definitely seen the other side where we have self-represented litigants and survivors doing the work through either unbundled or limited representation and doing a lot of their work on their own,
right,
um, and causing further delays in their legal matters. And that's not their fault. Like people
right. No,
don't know the
no.
law, they don't know the legal procedures, they don't know the process. And so
Yeah,
of course there would be delays. There probably would be some errors in how things are done in a certain way because the knowledge isn't there.
yeah,
And that's why we're saying it would be great for everyone to have a lawyer because that's what the lawyers are supposed to, that's their expertise.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, recently, and I think just on an ongoing basis as well, I've heard from a couple of people who have ongoing family matters. And one woman I was talking to last week described all the free summary advice services that she had consulted over like the last 2 or 3 years. I think it was. It was a pretty, reasonable time frame for family law, but a long time when you think about how much energy it takes to keep pushing things forward when you're the survivor doing it yourself. But she had kind of tapped out duty counsel at the court. She had
Hmm.
talked to the Family Law Line, which is a program of legal aid.
Hmm.
She had hired a couple of lawyers on small retainers, but then that money ran out, and then she had to go without a lawyer for a while. She'd done a bunch of free consultations. Anyway, by the end of it, it was like she had talked to 8 or 10 lawyers about her one matter, which had lots of elements to it. I mean, it's not straightforward, but at the same time, getting all that different legal advice can't be good.
Yeah.
And that kind of will get us into why we're talking about a good fit with a lawyer.
Yeah.
But I just feel like people do what they can, and sometimes it just, yeah, it can't be serving them. And like you say, it can create lots of delays in their matter as
Yeah.
well if they have to keep adjourning so that they can talk to legal counsel, all this stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's why, for Rise, through the creation of like the virtual legal clinic, that was one of the things that we were trying to avoid, which was what I called the merry-go-around of like summary
Right.
advice lawyers,
Right.
was to have the model of having a support worker, the same support worker staying with a survivor to navigate all the different lawyers in the summary advice that one could receive. And it's not great from like the lawyer's perspective too, because
Mhm.
summary advice is usually only 1 hour appointments. They're
Right.
supposed to be limited. So a set number of hours, total number of hours, so total number of appointments. And when you've got a family law file that's been continuing for over a year,
Hmm.
these the 1 hour appointment is just not sufficient to go through everything. So the lawyer also, like from our perspective at Rise, the lawyer is also limited in what support and advice they can provide
Yeah.
because they may not have the full history of a file, and it's
Right.
difficult. We don't want to provide wrong advice.
Hmm.
So, and in order for us to be truly confident in the advice we give, it would be prudent for us to review a file. But we can't review a file that's been going on for several months or a year in a limited summary advice appointment. So it's
Right. Yeah,
we're
exactly.
also between like a rock and a hard place when we're asked to give summary advice in these very lengthy family law matters.
Yeah, absolutely. So if we're talking about the ideal situation, which is where a lawyer and a client are working together over the long term, hopefully from start through till finish, then we want to have what we call a good fit. And when I think about
Hmm.
fit with a lawyer, I'm just thinking about someone who gets the client, who understands what's important to the client, even if the client isn't always great at vocalizing that. But what does it mean to you? What's a good fit with a lawyer for you from a lawyer's perspective?
A good fit, I think, would mean that like the client and the lawyer are on the same page about how to proceed and what issues are of a concern, which is like a top priority.
Right.
So, for example, if the client is, very, very basic, down to the bare bones, kind of the client really, really wants to go after child support,
Hmm.
because she needs to make rent, and that's just going to help her. Receiving child support is going to help her make rent for the next few months.
Right.
That's her priority.
Yeah.
Whereas if the lawyer was like, you know what, no, let's not focus on child support. Let's
Hmm.
focus on what activities, the child goes to after school, like
Right,
whether it's
right.
basketball or soccer, because that's what the other party is focusing on. Like,
Mm-hmm.
because there's a dispute about what extracurricular activities the children to go to. There's a little bit of a misalignment there. And
Right.
yes, there are all family laws tied together. For example, the cost of these activities
Mm-hmm.
could play into a factor into finances, of course.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it takes the lawyer, if that's the lawyer's train of thought, is like, you know what, if we figure out the cost of these extracurricular activities, maybe that will help in some way to bring into the discussion about child support. But then it's
Right.
up to the lawyer to convey that train of thought to the client,
Yeah, right.
and ensure that both the client and the lawyer is on the same page.
Yeah.
If
And
that's really what the issue is.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And what with the lawyer's experience, they might be looking at things differently. And you used the word priorities, and I think
Mm-hmm.
priorities are probably the biggest piece of it because I've joked in the past, like where um, criminal law is very linear, and you have the
Mm.
prosecution service pushing and motivating the case along. In family law, it's like a big scribble because you truly could start anywhere and then come back and revisit things. And the matter is moved along through the court system by the two parties involved and or however many number of parties there are. But it's not like it's being pushed or structured. And so figuring out those priorities and being on the same page as a lawyer is probably going to be really important for feeling like things are moving in the right direction.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the most interesting things about family law, right? You bring up criminal law where someone
Mhm.
is charged and accused of committing a crime, something that happened in the past. So
Mm-hmm.
theoretically, um, yes, people's lives still move on, things continue, but what is of
Mm-hmm.
the legal concern is something that's in the past. And yes, it could affect what's happening present day,
Yep.
but not as much as in family law, right? Family law, we
Mhm.
are always future looking. And so
Right.
what could be important today, let's say the child chooses soccer as opposed to basketball, that may not be
Hmm.
true 6 months from now. 6 months from
Right.
now, the
Right.
child may choose baseball as their extracurricular activity. So
Yep.
it doesn't have that past like impact, that past activity.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think that's why there's always this importance of priorities changing
Right.
if priorities do change.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think the
Absolutely.
lawyer and the client needs to be aware of that. And I think most are aware, most family lawyers are aware because that's the practice that we have is future looking.
Yeah, yeah, that's a really interesting framing of like the time period, the things that happened in the past. And, a thing that was a harm that was done is
Hmm.
how the criminal law gets involved. And family law is a lot more, what do we want it to look like in the future? How do we move forward from this point here?
Hmm.
Yeah. Well, so one of the ideas that we had for this episode came from a guide that we have
Hmm.
on our website, and we'll link that in our notes for this episode. But we have kind of some practical ways to look for a good fit with a lawyer. So we're going, I mean, there's a bit of information about uh, legal aid and, these other creative ways of hiring a lawyer. But we really wanted to focus on fit because feeling like your lawyer understands you is really important. And so, yeah, I think one of the first tips that totally makes sense, and people probably already do this, is just looking at some lawyers' websites, um, not looking at the lawyer reviews. Like you don't want to look at reviews of your own family doctor, for example, if you have a doctor, because it's always scary. It's all just the complaints. But when you look at a lawyer's website, you get a good sense of what they're about. They normally have some kind of vision statement or some kind of mission or their values or something like that. There are photos and they either give you a good feeling or not. And you can do this for like the top three or four lawyers that you're considering so that you're not just taking the first lawyer that you meet. Um, yeah, I think it's important to just get that first sense to narrow it down. And then I don't know, Vicky, if you ever did free consults with clients to see if there was a good fit. Yeah, how did that go?
Mhm. Yeah, I always had like gave 5 or 10 minutes of my time
Hmm.
when I had the capacity to take on new files. And I
Right.
think most lawyers do want to make sure that they also like there's a good fit both ways,
Yes.
right?
Right. Yeah.
So most lawyers do give a consultation
Hmm.
and have a phone call with a potential client just to make sure that they are able to work together because that's what it is. It is a working relationship and it's probably a very long working relationship because we all
Right.
know that family law matters continue for at least 2 years probably,
Yeah,
if not a
exactly.
year, minimum a
If
year,
not,
I would say.
yeah, longer,
Um,
absolutely.
so I think that's an important way for folks, clients and lawyers to kind of do that temperature check and make sure that they're
Hmm.
able to understand each other and understand what the other person is talking about, understand their priorities as we've
Hmm.
discussed, um, and and B, I think for the clients that we work with and the issues that come up for a lot of people who access our services is the understanding of family violence that a lawyer may have.
Yeah.
And I think rises to kind of taking the approach that, family violence is like any other legal issue and not everyone has expertise in it, just like I'm not, I don't have expertise in tax law, for example.
Yeah.
So I would never take on a
Yeah.
client who has tax uh, concerns.
Right. Yeah.
Um,
And yeah, it's a good point that the fit has to go both ways. And lawyers want to take on clients where they have experience with those particular legal issues. They want to make
mhm.
sure that they can do a good job of it, that they know what they would do and what the options
Yeah,
are for the client. So yeah, that fit does go both ways. So yeah, I've heard a lot of examples of lawyers giving a free 5 to 10 minute
yeah,
consultation just to make sure that yeah, the fit goes
yeah.
both ways.
I
Yeah.
mean, and it is required for us by our regulator, like the Law Society, that we're competent in the work that we do,
Yes.
right?
Right. Exactly.
So, um, that's really important when, folks are out there calling and looking
Hmm.
for lawyers, making sure that they either have experience of working on family violence files or understands family violence to the degree that it could be understood.
Yeah, yeah. And family violence is a good example of the legal term that exists in the legislation that the courts understand that
Mm-hmm.
may not be the wording that a survivor uses when they're talking
Yes.
to the lawyer. And they don't have to. When someone is interviewing or, having a quick consult with a lawyer, they can just speak very plainly about, using the words that are comfortable to them. They don't have to say parenting
Yeah.
time. They can say like, I want my kid to spend more time with me. How do we do that? What are my options?
Yeah.
Those sorts of things. And when they're talking about family violence, we did mention in some of the earlier episodes, sometimes clients don't even know what they're experiencing is family violence.
Yeah.
So I think it's important for people to be at ease about explaining in their own words what is it that's important to them? What do they want help with? Yeah, and it helps the lawyer if the client can explain what their goals are. Like, I want my ex to be able to pay me the money to help support the kids based on the income he's hiding because I don't know
Mm-hmm.
how to make ends meet and I know he is
Yeah.
bringing home a lot of money. Are you a
Yeah.
lawyer that can help me with that kind of thing?
Or I'm worried about pickup and drop-offs because every
Right.
time um
Yeah.
he's treating me really poorly or he's harassing me during these pickup
Hmm.
and drop-offs. So can we like I still want him to have the children, but I don't want to interact with him during those times. Is there a way we
Right.
can
Right.
figure that out? So yeah, we talk about that a lot in our guide. We like it's not on survivors and clients to use the legal words. It's actually our responsibility as the lawyer to do the family violence screening and to like interpret what clients need based on their own words and their own language and understand what it is that they it's our job is to put it into the legal words and that
Right.
what the courts can understand
Yeah.
and what
Yeah.
the legal system understands. But that's the whole point of having a lawyer is to be that legal and plain language translator.
Right, right, exactly. And I think most lawyers are very comfortable with doing that. They have had lots of practice kind of doing that translation, as you say. Um,
Hmm.
Now, just to be clear, though, this 5 to 10 minute consult isn't long enough for a lawyer to answer the question, like, what should I do or will I win, after that first
No.
call, but feeling out whether the things that are important to the survivor are also things that the lawyer has experience in navigating. That's what that first call can be really, really good for. Um, yeah, and we always say people are our lawyers are people too, right? That
Yeah.
yeah, just talk to them about what the issue is. Um, and also, I mean, I think this is one of the other threads going through many of our episodes that family court is long, and that can be really, really hard. And that's all the more reason for the fit to be as good as possible. I mean, lawyers don't have to be everything for the client. They may not be, yeah, someone that is totally understanding, the burden of having children and not being able to make ends meet, or they might not have the compassion in certain areas that they're looking for. But if they have the legal expertise and understand what the survivor is explaining, then they're probably a good fit. But again, because lawyers are people too, they're not going to be everything that the client needs in such a difficult time.
Yeah, and I think that's where the importance of having a support worker come in, right? Because lawyers aren't everything
Right.
and the support
Right.
workers can't be everything. But hopefully, by working together and collaboratively to support a mutual client, we can fill in a lot more of those gaps.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. So again, if everyone could find a lawyer, that would alleviate a lot of the problems. But I think fit is something we really wanted to talk about today because people do have choices, even if they feel like they're limited, even if finances are a huge barrier. There are often different ways of going about getting the legal help that someone needs. And so thinking about what is most important to me, what are my goals, those are going to be some of the biggest things that someone can tell a lawyer to make sure that they have a good fit.
Mhm.
Yeah. Any other last thoughts?
Um, yeah, I guess we're quite ideal idealized. This is like our
Yeah.
best case scenario. Everyone
It's
has
a
a
best
lawyer.
case scenario.
Yeah,
Yeah.
fully recognizing that it's not possible for everyone, and especially for, as we've identified before, those who are in rural and remote communities, like there
Right.
isn't a lot of choice.
Right.
Sometimes there's just the one family lawyer or none at all. So,
Hmm.
yeah, the word, I recognize that the word choice is like relative depending on what is available, um, to everybody.
Yeah, that's fair. That's a good place to. Yeah, good underline to end with, I think. So again,
Mhm.
we'll link the guide that we've been loosely talking about, generally referring to. We'll put that in the show notes, and you can find that along with the episode. And then we haven't decided on the topic for the next episode yet. We're going to wait and see how that goes, and it'll be a surprise for episode 18. So join us next time and find out what that's all about. We look forward to you being with us.
Thanks for joining.
Everything that we have said today is not legal advice. If you or someone you know needs legal advice, please consult with a lawyer. We want to acknowledge that this podcast would not be possible without the generous contribution by Women and Gender Equality Canada, Femmes et Égalité des Genres Canada.